When two oddball kids met on Roblox and started a friendship, it was clear to those around them that they were, at the very least, a bad influence on each other. Nobody could really assume how truly hateful they would later become over time, and, above that, what they were truly capable of. Usually, when there's an instance of violence being taken out on a school, it's done by a lone wolf attacker. It's very rare that two kids with the desire to commit such an attack actually meet, and it's even more rare for them to actually plan out and carry out those crimes, either together or separately. Well, today's story is one of those instances, and it's a story that starts out with two Swedish kids meeting on Roblox. Hugo Alfors Jackson was born on May 12th of 2006, and from the looks of it, he lived a relatively isolated life at home in Sweden. He was chronically online, spending most of his free time on his computer, playing games, talking to friends, and exploring the seedier sides of the internet. Despite being half Sri Lankan and half Colombian, he was a self-proclaimed proud white supremacist. This seemed to stem less from a fascination with white people and more because he felt he had a common enemy. Over a period of years, Hugo has stated that he began to develop quite a strong hatred for Muslims, Jews, and homosexuals. Leitai Richard Eckenstein was just a bit older, born on May 16th in 2005. He was a student at a school called NTI Gymnasiet in Sweden. He had grown up in a city called Staffanstorp, but later moved to a city called Henriksog with his family. Leitai had a rough time growing up, having both a history of mental illness and episodes of violence from a young age. When he was fairly young, he was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, ADHD, and oppositional defiant disorder. Not only that, but he would regularly experience hallucinations as well. Hugo and Leitai met online when they were both fairly young, most likely when they were around 10 or 11 years old. The two of them actually met on Roblox. Given that they found that they were both from Sweden and shared a lot of the same interests, they started talking more and more, playing almost every day together. The two became fast friends, eventually going as far as calling themselves blood brothers. As the two grew older, they moved on from Roblox and began talking throughout various online social media platforms. The two would talk on Skype over webcam fairly often until Leitai's mother began to dislike Hugo, saying that he swore too much. Eventually, Leitai was made to delete Skype as a result, with his mother feeling that Hugo was a bad influence. Forced to chat a bit more covertly, the two moved on to Discord, instead choosing to talk there mainly over text. Eventually, the two boys would come to hang out in person as well, about 4 or 5 times over the years, but it was difficult given the fact that they were young and lived fairly far away from each other. Attending the Kalleberg School in Eslöv, Sweden, Hugo was beginning to develop a new fascination: school shooters. Throughout his online journey, he began to develop a particular interest in Columbine as well as in instances of small-scale right-wing terrorism, mainly cases in Europe. He began to become quite invested in Nazism as well, even coming to carve multiple swastikas into his desk as well as draw the Iron Cross and SS symbols on his own walls. Leitai wrote up a manifesto of sorts for himself online which contained what has only been called racist content. The document itself has never been released or leaked, but what is known is that Leitai was very invested in spreading hard-right propaganda online. He was also no stranger to searching up information about violent massacres and terror acts, taking a particular fascination in knife crimes. Leitai himself was very interested in the Columbine massacre as well, seemingly coming to debate on committing an attack in a similar fashion of his own. Hugo and Leitai would come to discuss school shootings, terror acts, and other episodes of violence together very often. The two would also crack jokes and exchange memes about the incidents as well. They would also discuss politics, their hatred of other races, and incidents of mass violence in the news. In March of 2019, the Christchurch mosque shooting took place. The two boys took a particular fascination with this case, coming to speak of it and crack jokes about it very often. They, for one, liked how the attack was specifically made against Muslims. On another note, they loved that the attack was live-streamed and felt that live-streaming these attacks was a revolutionary concept. Hugo began writing up a manifesto of his own as well. In it, he credited Volvoik, which was a username that Leitai used, giving him special thanks for being his best friend. Hugo later said that not only did Leitai provide him with moral support, but he also helped him get in touch with other people within their sphere. Some of these people were a group that called themselves Gas the Jews, or simply GTJ for short. In an effort to talk online again, Hugo and Leitai began speaking English during their conversations. Both of them would live stream on Twitch from time to time, usually with one being on camera and answering questions in English while the other would type into the chat. This was done so that their parents wouldn't realize who they were talking to. Gradually, it did become more difficult for the two to talk, though. Leitai wasn't allowed to have his computer or be online during summer vacation, with his parents likely hoping that he would do something else. However, the day came when their friendship would face quite the hardship. After the two boys met up and went to a mutual friend's house, they started pounding down some vodka. Hugo decided to reveal a surprise, unwrapping a large Confederate flag and showing his friends his airsoft guns. The two decided to take pictures of the items and send them into their group chat. Leitai's parents came to be shown the images, reporting Hugo to the authorities. After this incident in April of 2020, Leitai's parents confiscated his computer entirely. They didn't even allow him to use his Chromebook that each student at his school received to do homework unless he was using it in the same room as one of them. Above all, he was forbidden to have any more contact with Hugo whatsoever. Several times throughout 2020 and 2021, Hugo would come to be visited by the police in his home. Given his online activity and his vocal hatred of Muslims, Jews, and gay people online, he really set off alarms with the authorities. On at least a few occasions, he was also reported by other users online who found his interests concerning at the least, threatening at the most. On a few other occasions, it was either because he had brought either knives or Nazi paraphernalia to school, once even wearing a Nazi armband to class. On another occasion, it was because of multiple photos of different school shooters being found on his person. For the first several times that the police came out to his home, nothing really came of it. Hugo, on multiple occasions, was simply referred to social services as the police simply washed their hands of him. However, in August of 2021, Hugo made more concrete threats over the internet, telling an acquaintance over Discord that he was planning on committing some sort of attack, even writing a bit of a step-by-step guide to committing a massacre for himself. This user, feeling positive that Hugo would do something, once again reported him to the FBI in the United States, likely not knowing where he was actually from. The FBI investigated and sent what they had found over to the authorities in Sweden, which then got traced back to Hugo. Once again, 4 police officers came out to his house to speak to him. However, just like last time, Hugo was able to talk his way out of it. Again, no action was taken, and the issue was simply forwarded to social services. By mid-July, Leitai's mom returned his computer with some restrictions. He was still to have no more contact with Hugo, and it seems that, for the most part, Leitai complied with this rule. But then, only 1 month later, all hell would break loose. Hugo eventually came to buy a bunch of gear. Some of what he came to show off online was merely airsoft guns, of which he had been developing quite a collection. He also bought what looked like a tactical vest with a Swedish flag front and center, as well as a helmet with the same flag as well. On the helmet, he mounted a GoPro camera and a microphone. He even got himself some dog tags and a skull print mask, one that he drew swastikas all over with a ballpoint pen. He took a lot of pictures of himself in this gear and sent them over to Leitai, hoping that he would see them at some point. Then came August 19th, 2021. About 1 day after sending the pictures to Leitai, Hugo decided that it was time to commit a massacre of his very own. He made his way out to his school in Kalleberg. Heading out to the school's football field, he was carrying a large gym bag that held 4 knives, 2 of his airsoft guns, an outfit of all-black clothing, his vest, and his helmet. He entered into a changing room at the school and geared up in the same getup that he had shown in his previous photos. He then went outside, pulled out his phone, hooked it up to his GoPro, propped it up on the ground, and started up a live stream. At the start of the live stream, Hugo played a song called Serbia Strong before spouting the meme, "Remember kids, subscribe to PewDiePie." This was not said because of the meme itself or because of any actual connection to PewDiePie, but instead because the perpetrator in the Christchurch mosque shooting shouted the exact same meme while fleeing the scene, and Hugo apparently wanted to pay tribute. It took Hugo 3 to 4 minutes into the live stream to get his bearings, spending the first few minutes walking around in circles. Eventually, he squatted down in front of the camera and gave a thumbs up. He then picked up his GoPro and attached it to his helmet before approaching the main building of the school. At about the 8-minute mark of the live stream, Hugo entered into his school. He then approached the teacher, 45-year-old Nicholas Vidison. Nicholas stopped him, pointing out his getup and saying, "You aren't wearing the correct uniform," likely thinking that the whole thing was some sort of joke. However, this was when Hugo pulled out one of his knives and stabbed the teacher in the stomach, causing him to crumple down to the ground and scream out in pain. He then continued to walk around the halls and swing his knife around others. 15 minutes into the live stream, the song "Don't Stop Me Now" by Queen was blasting as Hugo made his way back out to the football field. By now, the police were on the scene. Officers pulled up and ordered Hugo down to the ground. Likely hoping for the cops to end his life, Hugo pulled up one of his airsoft guns and aimed it towards them. The police then pulled out their guns and fired a warning shot towards Hugo, causing him to drop his gun in fear. The officers then tackled him to the ground and threw him into handcuffs, arresting him as the stream continued. For the about 4.5 remaining minutes of the live stream, the video cut out, but the audio could still be heard. Hugo told the police that he was tired of life, that he had had enough, and that he wanted to be shot. After a few minutes of this, the stream abruptly ended after 25 minutes and 36 seconds. Leitai wasn't there to see the live stream as it took place, but he was able to see a recording of the live stream in video format shortly afterwards. However, he stopped watching as the cops approached Hugo, unable to stand watching any further. Very shortly after, the live stream was deleted off of the internet and has never resurfaced aside from some screenshots. This attack quickly became known as the Eslov school stabbing within the media. Hugo's trial eventually came about a few months later in December, in which Hugo was found guilty on 1 count of attempted murder and 9 counts of grossly unlawful threats. He was sentenced to 2.5 years in a youth detention center. He was then ordered to pay the equivalent of about $52,000 to his victims. Our story doesn't even really end here. Rather than coming to his senses after seeing Hugo get arrested, Leitai was actually only more emboldened. You could say that he was inspired. Even after not having talked to his friend in quite some time, he was more than ready to carry out an attack in much the same vein. He began to prepare an attack on his own school, the NTI Gymnasiet. Leitai approached his school at 9:05 a.m. on January 10th, 2022, about a month after Hugo's sentencing. Much like Hugo, he entered in all-black clothing with a black face mask, carrying 4 knives on his person. He attached a Bluetooth speaker to his belt, which he also used to blast "Don't Stop Me Now" by Queen in reference to his friend. Leitai entered into a classroom and, without warning, pulled out a knife and set out on a rampage. He started slashing around wildly, causing many of the people in the room to flee through a nearby fire exit. Leitai charged towards a teacher and stabbed him before moving on to a student, slashing him as well. The student that was slashed began to run towards the other students fleeing through the fire exit. Leitai chased him down and began swinging his knife towards the fleeing crowd, injuring another student in the process. At 9:14 a.m., all of the other students had escaped. Frustrated or just finished in general, Leitai stabbed 3 of his knives into a desk straight up before laying the 4th knife down gently. He pulled out his phone and made a call to SOS Alarm, which is a line in Sweden for emergency services. He plainly told them what he had done and explained to them that he was a friend of Hugo Jackson, the perpetrator behind the Eslov school stabbing. Police came out to the scene and arrested Leitai without incident. The teacher was taken to the hospital, where his injuries were described as being relatively minor. One of the students, however, was injured much more seriously. Leitai was seen to be very calm as he was being arrested. He had finished his own attack very much as his friend had done, an attack that came to be dubbed as the Christiandad school stabbing. With both of the boys in prison and their victims healing, things were much more calm by this point. However, it wasn't all over for either of them. On March 16th, 2022, Hugo was actually hit with and convicted on 4 more charges of grossly unlawful threats. While his sentence remained exactly the same, he was ordered to pay even more in compensation to the victims. While being questioned in his detention hall for minors, the police continued to ask Hugo about the manifesto they had found on his computer after they searched his home. Mainly, they were concerned about possible co-conspirators. Given that Leitai was obviously connected to him, they were worried that there might be even more attacks in the pipeline. Hugo, in fact, dedicated the manifesto to more people than just Leitai, crediting someone only known as Vilnius as well. Hugo, at first, said that this person was a boy from Norway. Eventually, the interrogator was able to find that the names Vilnius and Volvoik within the manifesto were more likely to be the same person. Hugo still didn't want to tell them who either name referred to, but he did confirm that the 2 were indeed the same person. Eventually, the interrogator calmly told him that the police were already well aware of who the name was referring to. Hugo relented a bit and said that the two knew each other online and had met in person a few times. The interrogator asked him if this Vilnius might live near Kristianstad. Hugo said that, yes, this was the case. The interrogator then mentioned Leitai by name for the first time, startling Hugo a bit. Seeing that the police clearly already knew who he was referring to, Hugo decided to give up, admitting that he was indeed referring to Leitai in his manifesto. The police then asked Hugo what sort of role Leitai played in the attack on Hugo's school, but he was unwilling to answer. He instead simply implied that Leitai knew of his intentions, telling them, "We are like blood brothers and share everything together." Hugo then told the police that they might notice some similarities between his attack and some upcoming attacks within the country. He told them, it could take place at a school and it could be that the clothing is similar. Hugo confirmed that he did plan the attack with a few others, but refused to mention where or how it took place or even roughly what they said. Hugo was asked where the attacks would take place after this. All he would say was that they indeed will take place in Sweden. The interrogator then plainly asked him if Leitai was involved in the planning of these upcoming attacks as well. Hugo replied, simply, no comment. While searching his cell at his detention center, the police were able to find drawings that Hugo had made. One of the drawings showed a figure in military gear with an assault rifle standing outside of a mosque with the text, "Remove kebab," off to the side. On the top left corner of the page, Leitai's name was written, implying that this might be a depiction of some sort of attack they planned for him to commit in the future. Throughout his time in detention, Hugo still had some level of access to the media and the internet. It was reported by those who were held with him that he continued to celebrate both school shootings and similar incidents of violence as they took place all around the world. Leitai himself was held in custody for about 8 months until his trial eventually took place. In June of 2022, he was finally sentenced. He was found guilty on 3 counts of attempted murder and 2 counts of grossly unlawful threats. He was sentenced to 3 years in juvenile detention and was ordered to pay roughly $40,000 in compensation to the victims as well. Leitai will be released from prison in June of 2025. By the time you see this video, he might already be free. Hugo, on the other hand, is free, having finished out his sentence at some point in 2023. We'll just have to hope that the two boys are being watched very closely, or they very well may end up on the news again. Neither of them have actually ever shown remorse for what they've done, and Hugo actually still continues to celebrate these attacks as they happen. The live stream of Hugo's attack is still considered to be a case of NSFL, not safe for life, lost media. Given how very few times it was viewed before it was taken down, and how now the police seem to be the only people with a copy, it seems very unlikely that it will ever be leaked to the public. Once again everyone, thank you for watching my video. If you found it interesting, please give it a like, it really helps me out in the algorithm, and feel free to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Just recently I've opened up a merch store. There you can get yourself some cool Dire Trip t-shirts and coffee mugs and all sorts of other stuff too. If you want, go ahead and follow me on social media. If anything were to ever happen to this channel, that would probably be the only way you'd ever hear about it. I also really appreciate when people subscribe to me on Patreon. There you can get videos early, ad-free, and uncensored. Channel memberships are up too, and you get the same benefits there as well. Once again, this has been your host Kyle. Thank you, and good night.